Moonshiners Season 14 Final. Mark and Digger evade arrest as the law closes in. The smoke curled through the pines of Cock County, Tennessee, rising from the hidden still site nestled deep in the holler. It had been a good season, maybe too good. Mark and Digger stood by their copper still, steam hissing, liquor trickling into mason jars like Appalachian gold. The run was almost done, but tension crackled in the crisp morning air. "We got maybe one more pull before we shut her down," Digger muttered, eyes scanning the ridge above them. Mark nodded, adjusting the cap on his head. "I ain't got a good feeling, Digger. Feels like the woods are listening." "Wouldn't surprise me none," Digger replied. "We've been making too much noise, bringing in more mash than usual. Hell, we even put a camera up last week to film that Shine apple pie special." "Worth it though," Mark grinned. "That apple pie moonshine's been moving faster than a jackrabbit on a skillet." But even as they joked, the threat of the law was becoming more real. Mark's cousin, Chuck, who sometimes ran errands for the pair, had gone silent after a suspicious run-in with fish and wildlife. Rumors buzzed that the sheriff's office had teamed up with federal agents and were quietly tightening a net around some of the holler's biggest producers. And Mark and Digger? They weren't just big, they were legends. Scene 1. A warning in the wind. The next morning, a dusty old pickup rumbled up the winding gravel road to Digger's place. Tim Smith sat behind the wheel, his brow furrowed, jaw tight. He'd left moonshining behind, or so he told the cameras, but his roots went deep, and loyalty ran thicker than liquor. "You boys need to shut it down." "Now," Tim said, climbing out of the truck. Digger leaned against a post, chewing a toothpick. "What's eating you, Tim?" "They raided Big Mac's still yesterday. Took everything, equipment, barrels, even his damn dog. Word is, they got GPS data from Chuck's phone. They're coming, and your hollow's lit up like a Christmas tree on satellite." Mark's face darkened. "Chuck ratted us, or don't think so," Tim said. "But they ain't stupid. One slip's all they need." Digger tipped his hat back. "Then we better disappear this still before they come knockin'." Scene 2. The cover-up Mark and Digger kicked into high gear. First, they shut down the still and siphoned off the final run into tightly sealed jars, hiding them under a camouflage false floor in the old barn. Digger pulled out a decades-old plan from the Prohibition days, a series of false trails and decoy equipment meant to lead lawmen astray. They rigged a dummy still, nothing but copper junk hooked to a propane tank and some burnt sugar water, 2 ridges over, then ran ATV tracks to and from it. The real equipment, expertly broken down, was packed in barrels and floated down a creek to a dry case system once used by moonshiners during the Depression. "This feels like old times," Mark grinned, even as sweat soaked through his shirt. "Yeah," Digger muttered. "Except now we're older and got more to lose." Scene 3. The raid 3 days later, it happened. Unmarked black trucks crept up the trail just before dawn. A drone buzzed overhead. Cameras from the Moonshiners crew were rolling when blue jackets emerged from the brush. ATF, state troopers, and a pair of fish and wildlife officers, all armed and deadly serious. Digger saw them first from a hidden trail camera feed routed to his phone. "They're here." "Then let's make 'em dance," Mark said, grabbing his walkie and flipping to channel 3. The decoy still was already cracked. The drone, spotting the ATV tracks, honed in on the hot site 2 ridges away. As agents crashed through the woods, breath ragged from the climb, they found nothing but charred copper and a handwritten sign nailed to a tree. "Too slow, boys. Try again next season." Back at the real holler, Mark and Digger watched from a ridge as the feds swept the wrong location. The moonshine was safe. the still was gone, and they had vanished into the trees like ghosts. Scene 4. The reckoning they fall out was quick and furious. Chuck, after being interrogated for hours, lawyered up and confirmed he'd been followed, but hadn't said a word. The feds confiscated the dummy, still, and publicly declared a major disruption to illegal operations in Cock County. Privately, they knew they'd been had. "We underestimated those hillbillies," one agent was heard muttering. Mark and Digger stayed quiet, laying low in separate cabins for a week. When they finally met again, it was on a foggy morning, sipping black coffee near a creek bed. "I tell you what," Digger said, "I ain't never moving another gallon unless it's in a church collection plate." Mark chuckled. "You been saying that since 2009. Digger grinned. "Yeah, and we still ain't got caught." Scene 5. Smoke rises again be season's end. The Moonshiners camera crew was filming a wrap-up in a rustic tavern just outside of Gatlinburg. Local fans had gathered to cheer quiet about the close call. The finale aired with tension high. The raid, the warning, the cover-up, but not the real twist. That remained off-camera. As the credits rolled, a final shot appeared. A slow zoom through the woods, settling on a faint plume of smoke curling from the trees, barely visible. Then, Digger's voiceover, "You can hunt us. You can chase us. But you ain't never gonna catch smoke in the hollow." Fade to black. Epilogue. Appalachian legacy following spring. Rumors swirled once again. A new batch of apple pie moonshine was making its way through the mountains. Smooth. Potent. With a flavor you could only get from the hands of true craftsmen. In a cabin filled with tools and copper, Mark wiped down a coil and handed a mason jar to Digger. "You think we got one more season in us?" Digger took a sip, smiled. "As long as the law's too slow and the shine's this good, hell yeah." Scene opens with golden sunlight breaking through the dense canopy of Appalachian hardwoods, the chirp of crickets fading into the low rumble of a pickup truck winding down a dirt road. Narrator, voiceover. As the season draws to a close, the heat is on in East Tennessee. After months of running shine under the nose of the law, Mark and Digger are staring down the barrel of a full-blown raid. But these boys didn't come this far to get caught now. Act I. The calm Befferate had been a good season, maybe too good. Mark stood at the edge of the clearing, hands on hips, surveying their final batch, bubbling like a devil's brew. The copper still glowed in the early morning light. Digger emerged from behind the shack with a cup of coffee, a cigarette dangling from his lips, face lined with tension. Mark, "You feel it too, don't you?" Digger, "Like a tick on my spine. Something's comin'." Sheriff's been sniffing closer every week. They'd been careful, changing routes, switching burner phones, even burying the still's fuel lines to hide the smell, but no run lasts forever. Word was, a local informant had flipped. Someone who knew where the still was. A rookie mistake, trusting the wrong help. Still, the final haul had to go out. 5 gallons of peach brandy, 3 barrels of high-corned white lightning, and 1 small keg of their top-secret maple spice recipe. A rare, sweet burn made only for VIP buyers. Digger, "We finish this run, we lay low. Maybe for good." Mark, nodding. "One more ride." Act O. A storm gathers that night. Under the veil of thick clouds and no moon, the duo packed the moonshine into a false-bottom trailer, hiding the kegs under a pile of old tractor parts. Tickle, ever the wild card, had agreed to meet them 2 ridges over with his beat-up Bronco to split the stash and throw off the trail. Meanwhile, the law was watching. ATF agent Harris had spent 6 weeks crawling through brush and backwoods, building a case. With a warrant in hand and a green light from the sheriff, he prepped the team for a pre-dawn raid. Helicopters were on standby. The hammer was about to drop. Agent Harris to his team. "We go in quiet, full sweep. These boys are old school, but don't underestimate them. Act IA. Tickle's Gambleet, the rendezvous point. Tickle paced beside his truck, lighting a joint with one hand and scanning the tree line. Tickle, to himself. They're late. Damn it, Digger. 10 minutes passed. Then headlights crept through the dark. Mark and Digger's truck eased into view. Mark. You look nervous as a turkey in November. Tickle. Man, I've been hearing things. Somebody ratted. Y'all gotta go ghost tonight. The three men spoke quickly, unloading half the stash into Tickle's Bronco. Digger. We take the long way through the holler. If they're on our tail, we'll make it look like we split 3 ways. Tickle, grinning. You know, I always wanted to drive through a river at full speed. They slapped hands and split. Mark and Digger veered west, into the deepest thickets of Monroe County. Tickle peeled east toward the state line, tires kicking gravel like fireworks. Act IV. The chase just before dawn, the still sight lit up, floodlights, shouting, boots on gravel. But the still was cold. The mash barrels empty. The place had been stripped clean, like ghosts had packed up and gone. Agent Harris fumed. Agent Harris. Damn it. They knew. A deputy handed him a note found nailed to a post-it note, scrawled in Digger's chicken scratch, "A nice try, boys. See ya next season." Harris threw his coffee. The chase was on. Elsewhere, Mark and Digger zigzagged over logging trails, slipping through gullies, fording a creek deep enough to nearly drown the truck's tailpipe. With every jolt and bounce, the truck groaned, but it held. Their route ended at an old tobacco barn Digger's grandfather once used to dry leaves. Hidden behind stacked crates, they waited, listened, silent but alert. Mark, whispering, "You think we're clear?" Digger, "We ain't clear till we're drinking this shine on a porch in Kentucky."